ruling that no COVID-19 patients can be forced into state facilities for isolation or quarantine. Instead, they must be able to show that they're able to self-isolate at home or in another residence. The organisation AfriForum challenged the regulations, saying that they were nonsensical. The High Court ruling is the second ruling in just 24 hours against some of the government's lockdown rules. For more on the story, joined now by the AfriForum's head of campaigns, Monique Taute. Monique, good afternoon to you. Why did you go to court on this case? Why is it wrong for government to say to someone, you're actually a danger to the rest of the community, we need you in quarantine?
So AfriForum's application was based on the fact that the regulations are unconstitutional, illegal and irrational. The regulations determine, among other, that people who test positive for COVID-19, regardless of whether they show symptoms, can be put in government's isolation facilities. And the regulations would have been given, would have given the state the power to force people without their permission into quarantine, even under circumstances where the person may be able to effectively self-isolate. And it would consequently have given law enforcers and the state too much power under the guise of combating the spread of the virus. This would also place an unnecessary burden on the already limited state resources and may lead to people refusing to get tested from the fear of compulsory state quarantine.
Okay, we're talking about a tiny number of people that this has happened to. I understand that it's on the books, but it's happened to, it happened to a group of people who came in from Mozambique. That's pretty much it, right? A couple of people have come in from other countries. It happened to 2 doctors who were then released, but that's it. We're talking about a tiny number of people that this has happened to, or could even potentially happen to.
So we have another case on that side, and this case only deals with people who test positive and who live in South Africa. So this does not deal with people that come from another country into South Africa. So that is a completely different case. What AfriForum has seen in this time is that civil rights organisations and institutions that oppose autocratic and irrational decisions by governments has become increasingly clear during this lockdown. And when government abuses its power and try to bully people by violating people's rights, AfriForum will stand up against it to the benefit of everyone in the country. According to the United Nations, South Africa's lockdown regulations are toxic, and it seems that regulations are no longer about the fight against the coronavirus for government, but rather goes into an attempt to promote the ANC's own communist agenda. The case that
Monique,
another victory by AfriForum, where we achieved, where a court ordered that, ruled that the Refix at Sabisedi quarantine camp near Groblersdal had to be closed, and that the people that would be quarantined there had to be allowed to go home.
All right,
so that is another case.
Monique, yes. I'm going to interrupt you there. We like to stick to the facts. I don't believe the United Nations called our lockdown regulations toxic. It was critical, yes. I don't think it used the word toxic.
Well, AfriForum believes that it has become toxic, and if we look at...
Okay, Monique, I realize you have talking points and you're trying to stick to them. You said the United Nations said they were toxic. You can't actually prove that, right? Okay, let's move on.
The United Nations said that there's something going on in South Africa, so I think even the international community is seeing that what's happening here is not right. But let's stick to the case. Even the department failed to oppose AfriForum's application, and the minister agreed that AfriForum's application should be made in order in court. And this determines that the regulations should be read in such a manner that people who are able to effectively self-isolate should be able to do so. So even the minister and the government agreed with AfriForum's application.
Okay. This is not the first time that judges and people involved in the law have had to look at the issue around quarantine. Tuberculosis patients have been kept in forcible quarantine before, against their will. I don't recall AfriForum going to court on their behalf.
A very different situation. We're seeing a nationwide lockdown where people's rights are being taken away by governments. People's rights to freedom can be taken away just on when government decides to do that. So that's why AfriForum says we will stand up against these toxic regulations, and the court agreed, and we are very glad about yesterday's court judgment as well, where the level 3 and level 4 regulations will be changed in due course. So So we will keep on watching the government and make sure that people's rights aren't infringed.
AfriForum is doing this for the good of everybody.
Yes.
You said that this was part of the ANC's communist agenda. The governments of Italy and Spain have had intense lockdowns. In fact, I think if you ask them, they would wish they had had our kind of lockdown a lot earlier than they did, and a lot of lives would be saved. I don't recall off the top of my head if Spain and Italy have communist governments.
Well, I think you're speaking about a completely different thing. What we are seeing is that our government wants to put people that can effectively self-isolate into quarantine sites. And what AfriForum says is this cannot be legal. People's right to freedom cannot be infringed, and the court agreed.
Okay. Just back to the original question, because I still don't have a number. How many people has this actually happened to? I mean, I realize they're on the books, but you say that the people who came in from other countries is a different case. That's fine. But how many people has it happened to? I can't think of one, apart from those 2 doctors.
It has not happened yet, but the government has made it clear that it was in their plans to do this. And the Minister of Health clearly said that they are working to the point where all people who test positive will be put in quarantine camps. We saw in KwaZulu-Natal, they wanted to do that as well in KwaZulu-Natal, and AfriForum wrote a letter to them, to the government, and they retracted that statement. So there were definitely threats from the government that they were planning to put everyone who tests positive for COVID-19 in quarantine camps. And that is why AfriForum decided to go to court to make sure that this cannot happen.
Monique Taute, thank you very much indeed, Head of Campaigns at the organisation AfriForum.